It's no secret, the world wants you weak. There's a coordinated effort by governments, media, healthcare, education, and more to destroy men of strength entirely. This agenda slowly seduces men into weakness and compliance. They become addicted to comfort, mentally weak, and ultimately reliant on the state. But embedded within the spirit of every man, there is a deep desire to be strong and independent, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually as well, to become the fathers, husbands, and community leaders that God designed us to be. My name is Jeremy Sladen, and I understand the struggle firsthand. As a former professional athlete, I found myself being led down a path of confusion and weakness after my sports career ended. Slowly, I became addicted to comfort. I was sluggish, out of shape, and disconnected from God. My spiritual life was in disarray, and my marriage was at risk. I knew things had to change, and after a big wake-up call, I embarked on a personal reset that transformed my mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. After my own personal transformation, I witnessed countless men trapped in similar circumstances, targeted by a culture aiming for their irrelevance. This led me to launch the Warrior Mind, Body, and Soul program. Warrior MBS is a 70-day competitive experience that has been designed from the ground up to unleash the strong man within you. It includes a comprehensive eating plan, a personally customized workout plan based on your goals, soul-building operations to strengthen your faith, and a brotherhood of like-minded Christian men who are with you in the fight. This experience is crafted from the ground up to help you get your mojo back. Here's what others are saying about Warrior MBS.
The program was amazing for me. Just for muscle toning, for overall fitness.
Great diet, great soul building ops, great people you get to meet.
One of the things I love is that I'm surrounded by like-minded men who love the Lord, men who want to be good leaders, not only in their home, but also in the community for which they live.
It's changed my life. I think it has potential to change yours. I highly encourage that you join.
The world needs men who are strong, compassionate, and resilient, and it needs them now more than ever. Join me on this journey and become a warrior in mind, body, and soul.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today on Jay Slay Made in the USA, where we explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. Guys, that commercial that just played, I'm excited because you have until tomorrow to sign up for this thing. Our next round, round 7, kicks off on Saturday. So if you want to get in, if you want to be a part of the kickoff, you need to sign up by tomorrow. Well, tomorrow when I play this is going to be Friday, so I might as well say today. Sign up today. If you're watching this, sign up, because if you want to be empowered, if you want to get past that initial 2 to 3 days in the new year when you're feeling really good, you got those New Year's endorphins, Christmas just happened, you're thinking, man, this is going to be the year. I'm going to make that change. But now it's the 11th. You know, we've had 11 days pass already getting into 2024. And some of those little temptations, some of those little habits and hangups and the old hurts are kind of coming back. And you're wondering, is this the year that I can tamp it back down and keep it there? Or is this year I can be set free from all that junk, that garbage that's been pulling me back down, holding me back? I know for me, I want to feel set free. I don't want to feel like I'm always pushing it back down in the box, whatever it is. And my guest today is a man that goes by the name of Che. He is the author and podcaster that is in charge. He's the founder of the YouTube channel, the No Spoon Podcast. He's an author. He's a social media influencer. And like I said, podcaster. He discusses culture, politics, and common sense. His latest book is called the Freedom Doctrine Book, My Path To Canaan. Very interesting title. We're going to get into that in a minute. His path to Canaan. And it's part of a series he's putting together. He's on Instagram. We're going to put all the links in the description. He's got a new Substack that's out. But the really, really cool thing about him is I don't think this man is any longer trying to tamp it down all the time. This man's been set free. He spent 15 years in a California prison after living a life of crime, drugs, and gangs. And now he's focused on serving regular people like himself, people like you, people like me. So, Che, brother, I'm so glad to have you on today, and I'm excited to hear what you're going to bring to the table. Thanks for coming on.
Man, I appreciate you. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to talking to your audience and getting this message out there.
Yes, sir. Well, let's start with your life. You know, first of all, I said, this is a first. I've never had a man on the show with more than maybe 6 months in prison. You had 15 consecutive years. I take it your book title, My Path to Canaan, kind of talks about that. Give us the down low on what happened.
Yeah, I was, I grew up in a two-parent household, a very Christian household. We went to church all the time, so I was very much ingrained with the Bible. I memorized scripture. I know all that stuff, and it's even like now to this day when I meet people who don't understand how the Bible works, I'm like, "What kind of household did you grow up in?" Because I grew up in a household that was number one. But I grew up playing sports, very active in sports, had dreams of playing, Division I college football and all the way to the NFL. And then when that kind of fell through, I found myself just drifting. You know what I mean? Getting involved with people that I knew but wasn't friends with, but became closer friends with because we had a common interest, and that common interest was nothing, right? We didn't have any goals, any ambition, just mad at the world, mad at the system, mad at everybody we can be mad at. And so that kind of led me to a path of, like you said, drugs, gangs, hanging out, doing, whatever. And, one thing led to another. And when I was just turned 20 years old, I got caught up in a shooting case, and it got me 15 years in prison. And that's where I spent all my 20s and half my 30s, right there, incarcerated in California. And my book is basically, like I was telling you, beforehand. I overcame all that, you know what I mean, and I'm still overcoming it. Obviously, the God is still working in me. He's still doing great things in my life, and He's blessed me with so much. And I've kind of put it down on paper and trying to give it to the world and let people who have either in the same situation, or maybe not even as extreme a situation, but just in a situation where you find yourself drifting and don't have a purpose. And so, I talk about my transformation. I went from, being in the streets, and then, falling back on what I learned as far as, going back to Christianity. And then at one point, I became very, very engulfed with the Marxism and the socialism, and I became an atheist. I became an avowed atheist.
Now, was that pre-prison, pre-crime, or was that during prison?
No, that was during prison.
Okay.
That was during prison.
So is there a big movement of socialism, communism, Marxism? Because that's a school of thought. So, is it a formalized movement within prison, or is it just kind of a general consciousness of the system screwed up and we need something to replace it? Might as well be communism.
I think it's more the last. I don't think it's not a huge movement, right?
Okay.
But it's there. The so-called conscious prisoners are, they lean more towards the left. So because like I said, it gives us it gives us something to point the finger at, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of accountability going on in prison, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So Marxism is something that's easy to say. And when I started studying it, I felt like, oh yeah, this is it. See, it's not my fault. See, I'm not to blame for this. You know what I mean? And all I saw that it did was put me, it put me in a deeper hole, because if I'm not to blame, then it just gives me an excuse to keep making dumb decisions. And the more dumb decisions I made, the deeper I went down this abyss. And so it's not a big thing, but it's there.
You appear to be more of an intelligent guy than the average, maybe California guy that spent that long in prison. Were you actually, though, yourself reading like the Communist Manifesto and books like that yourself? Oh, yeah. Okay. I had a feeling you might be. And did Marx, because you would read, or you've read this, so you would know, and it's been a long time since I've opened those pages, but he couldn't really sell it to the simple lower classes in Germany and the other places he tried to take it. But like there was a really low, like degenerate type class, I think he would have called it, that was buying into it, because it's like they didn't have anything else, but they were like the only ones. And it reminds me of like, well, that's kind of like a prison class would be today.
Yeah, he described that as the lumpen proletariat, which was the criminal class, the degenerate class.
Okay.
And that's who kind of gravitated more, especially more in the West. In the West, it became big amongst that class of people. The working class didn't really gravitate, because over here, our working class is well taken care of, or it has been
historically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right. So you're involved with all that. You're mentally getting into communism and those things. What about the shift that happened?
The shift that happened was, I guess you could say it was more of a reality take, right? At the time, I was kind of coming out of the atheism thing because I couldn't really get around or grasp the concept of there not being a God. And so, but in my extreme nature, I guess you could say I took that too far. I started reading into the scriptures and reading into some of the occult stuff that was telling me that I was God.
Yeah.
And so I started going down that path of man is God. And so, again, I attribute that to just, you know, my unwillingness to submit to what is right and what is righteous and what is good. And so I remember standing there one day, and I had got, at the time I was doing a 2-year sentence in the SHU, which is a security housing unit, because I had caught a battery on an inmate. So I was doing 2 years
Say
in
that again. You had done
isolation.
what on an inmate?
A battery. Yeah.
Okay.
So I did 2 years back there, and I remember sitting there at my window looking outside of into the day room, and I'm like, because every time you would tell somebody, man is God, people would be like, well, then if you're God, then get yourself out of prison. What are you
Right.
doing here? And so I had to really sit there and think about that. And I thought, you know what? I don't remember making all this. I don't remember doing all this. And then it kind of like a moment of clarity came and said, but you did, but not in the way that you're trying to push it on people. You did in the decisions that you made. So every bad decision led to a worse situation, and every situation that you were in where you made another bad decision led to another bad situation, and so on and so forth. And the only way that you can change course is if you take accountability for yourself and start realizing that it's you who keeps making these decisions. And then when you decide that you're going to make better decisions, then your life will be better. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like what brought me out of that. But you know what, to be honest with you, I didn't, my political ideology didn't really change until I came home, and I started to see that a lot of the things that we were advocating for and saying that a lot of times are the people that are the victim of the system, I would be around these people, and I had to be really honest with myself and say, no, most of it is because we made bad decisions.
Well, so you were crossing culture then, because you said when you came home out of prison, that was around 2017, right?
2017, 2018.
And that
yeah.
was when these communist Marxist ideas were becoming a bit more mainstreamed, especially in progressive areas of the country. LA would be like prime example number one. So you were
Yeah.
going this way out of that way of thinking, whereas the world in America was going into it. Was that difficult, or did it just make it easier for you to spot?
It made it easier for me to spot because, the one issue that I couldn't grasp, right, when it comes, especially with these new mainstream progressives, or right, or whatever you want to call them, right,
Right.
was the gun issue, right? So I would sit here and say, well, we hate the system, right? We hate the capitalism, we hate the government, we hate the police, but you want us to give our guns up to who? The system,
same people.
the government, the police, the
Yeah.
same people that we don't trust, that we hate, that we call racist and, oppressive and all these things. So it didn't, I couldn't grasp that. And I started to see, wait, the whole movement that was that when I started studying and I adhered to it, it was more of a underground kind of a taboo type of movement. But now I'm watching celebrities,
Yeah.
kind of latch onto it, and I'm like, wait a minute here. Now it's being sponsored by these big capitalist companies, and I'm like, no, something's not right here.
Yeah, and the
I don't
capitalist
think that
companies
they're-
aren't buying into it whatsoever. They're selling it to keep these people down, to keep them consumers. That's what it is.
Exactly. And so I started saying, this is, something is not right with this. Something is not right with the whole thing. And then, when you really go into and you look into to Marx and Engels, and you start to read this stuff, and then read Mao and Lenin and all them, Marxism, socialism, communism, all that, which is really up under this all the same thing, right? All that is a great tool for a ruling class to be able to keep everybody under control. That's really what it is. I mean, it's a master design to keep you subjugated to the state. And even though they talk about, Lenin talked about the withering away of the state, that's never going to happen. It's a dystopia that they just sell you. And at the end of the day, what's going to happen is what's always happened in every one of these social experiments in every country that's happened is a managerial class will solidify, and it will never go anywhere. And you're going to have haves and have-nots, and that's it. And there's going to be total dictatorship and rulership of the ruling class.
Yeah. And the people that have really studied these political ideologies, as well as people that have really looked into conspiracy, I've found that those people that are at the top of their game, that have really looked at these ideologies, will say at the end of the day, communism and fascism, which fascism's the great boogeyman right now. People call me a fascist all the time because of some of my, traditionally held like worldviews. They are the same. At the end of the day, they have the same goal: a very, very small ruling class and a masses of sheep that cannot defend themselves and just have to go along to get along.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all when you really break it down. Yeah.
Tell me about this. I pulled, as you were talking about the shoe, let me pull a picture up here. Is this reminiscent? You said you had a window, I see like one little window there. Is this generally where you kind of what it looked like?
Yeah, that's somewhat like that. That wasn't the one how it was where I was at, but it's the same concept.
In terms
Just,
of
you don't
like
really have-
amenities and stuff, like would it have been worse? Or, I mean, that looks like a 6 foot by 12 foot kind of a space.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's how it looks. Pretty
Okay.
much. I mean, more or less, I see that the lockers are a little different, but yeah, you're not getting. I know now it's changed a lot, especially in California. Like they allow them to have certain things that wasn't there, and that was a result of a lot of pressure from the inmates on the administration and outside, agencies that really were pressuring them to change and make it more quote unquote humane. But yeah,
Does that mess with your soul? I mean, when you have to stay in a place like that. Now, I understand you get some time out every day. I'm guessing, but that would mess with people to have to go there. I don't know how many hours a day every day for 2 years.
You would be in there. Some days you're going to be in there all day long. Well, most days you will. So I'd say you would get yard, for a few hours every 3 days. But the yard is just going to be we call them dog cages, because it's like, imagine a dog cage, but maybe a little bit, but bigger. You know what I mean? Like, maybe,
does it have the chain link roof as well?
Yeah, the whole thing.
Yeah, I put some roofs on prisons, so I was like walking around those a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah. I mean, does it mess with your? I mean, it can. Yeah, it really can. I mean, I've seen a lot of people be back there, and they're not the same after. They're not the same after that experience. For me personally, I mean, I was there for 2 years. I've known guys that were in there for a lot longer than that. So, but for me personally, I didn't really have a difficult time with it. You know what I mean? I really took the opportunity to do a lot of reading, studying, working out, and just, it really trains you to be able to adapt to whatever situation that you're in. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
It's amazing how the human mind or human spirit, it can break over these type of things, but then it can make you at the same token.
You were hitting on exactly what I was thinking of. I'm thinking of prison can either, like, if you're seem like you use your time wisely, even though I don't agree with Marxism and all that. You were reading, you were working out, you were doing things, and you can almost be empowered by making your circle very small. And I'm reminded, did you ever see that movie Mask of Zorro?
No, I've never seen it.
Anthony Hopkins. And anyway, like, it's this new Zorro that comes on the scene, but he's out of control. He's kind of wild. And the old Zorro's training him in the way of the sword and of the way of self-control and all this. And he's like, we're going to put you in this little confined circle, and you got to stay inside of it all day. And it was like 6 feet in diameter. And he had to learn, like, to be in that circle, to gain control of his breathing and his body first, and learn how to fight without moving outside of that circle. And then once he mastered that, it was a little bit bigger circle, then a little bit bigger. And then he was able to go out into the world. But it was this time of self-mastery for him. So, on the one hand, I was like, does it steal your soul to stay in there? But on the other hand, I can see how it would be like a training ground to learn self-control.
Oh yeah. I mean, you have to, so you have to condition yourself. And I look at it like this, man. Like, it doesn't matter. One of the things that I like to do when I teach and I talk to the guys that I talk to that are going have had similar circumstances is learn how to take the principles of the things that you've learned and make them transferable. Don't make them just for this one area. So, like, you played sports and you were an athlete. There's a lot of principles, there's a lot of value that you got from playing sports, but
No
that
doubt.
doesn't just stay right there on the baseball diamond. It transfers into business, it transfers into your family life, your spiritual life, it transfers into what you're doing right here with this podcast.
No
All
doubt.
these principles are the same. And so the thing about it is you have to be able to adapt to every environment and situation that you find yourself in, right? And then one of the main things that you have to do is be present in the situation and in the moment.
Yes.
So if my life and my existence right now is in a 9 by 12 foot cell or however big they are, then that's where it is. I need to master this environment. I can't be worried about what's going on with my family. I can't be worried about what's going on in the mainline yards. I can't be worried about anything except what's going on in this situation. And that's the same thing. And it what happens is that a lot of people break because they're living somewhere else. They're living in a different time period. They're living in a different geographical location. They're just constantly living something different. And I think that's a lot of our problem these days, as far as just our society, is that we're constantly looking for the next thing. What's next? What's next?
Yeah.
As opposed to focusing on where you're at and making where you're at the best it can possibly be. And that's what that taught me, is to just don't worry about things you can't control. Don't focus your energy on things that are not going to benefit you, and make every situation and every environment that you're in the best for yourself.
Absolutely. And let's talk about that for a minute. So about making this, whatever situation you're in, the best for yourself. You said something on one of your recent shows. I'm going to pull up the title of it. You'll probably remember. It wasn't that long ago. Give me 1 second here. It was a show about overcoming habits and addictions, overcoming your inner demons. That's what it was titled.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how long, maybe it was 3-4 months ago. You did, it was a monologue show. It was really, really great. I'll link to it in the description. But in that, you were kind of talking about the affirmations that you give yourself versus what a lot of the 12-step programs do. I recently had to let go of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been in it. I have gained things from it. I think the big book's right over there. I think the big book is got a lot of great stuff in it. No doubt about it. But repeating over and over, "Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm an alcoholic." Even when I'm not drinking and I'm doing well. "Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm an alcoholic. Jeremy, I'm an alcoholic. I've got something to say on this." It ingrained it so much. And I'm not blaming this. When I slipped up about 2 weeks ago and had some drinks at a party, I remember thinking right before, like, I had the drinks, like, I'm powerless over this. I have no power over this. And it was like a loophole. It was a way that I told myself, like, I might as well enjoy it because I got no power over it, because I put myself in the situation. And that goes against, like, what the Bible teaches about I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, I'm not saying I can do it alone, but God, and it also doesn't say, there's a famous phrase in AA of, well, God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. I see some value in that, right? But this whole idea of I am powerless and I cannot help myself. It truly, if you get caught in the moment, it feels very disempowering. That's what happened to me. And I've just met several people here recently. I guess it might be God leading me down this path, who have all said similar things of the better path is empowerment, but maybe not in a worldly way, because they're always talking about self-empowerment. So I'll stop talking there. Give me your thoughts on what I just said.
Well, so that's kind of the reason why I wrote this book, and
Okay.
I'm writing this series, to be honest with you. Most of the rehabilitational programs that you're going to go through, at least out here, I don't know about the rest of the country, they're all centered around the AA and the 12 steps. Now, like you said, there are some good things. I think there's good things that you can find in anything. You know what I mean? I think it's our duty and our job as human beings to find the best parts of anything and utilize it for ourselves. But I think overall that the program, it does more harm than good. And now I know there's a lot of people that are going to say, well, I owe everything to AA. And I've had, man, trust me, I've had it out with people over this. And every time I bring this up in my classes and stuff, there's always people that get real offended, and they get like, no, you don't understand. I need that. And I just say, but I feel like that it really kind of handicaps us in a sense of, like you said, it's not what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to overcome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can overcome your problems. You know, like you just said right now, you know, you can do all things through Christ. So that means all things. That means there is no burden, there is no addiction, there is no vice, there is no ailment that I cannot overcome as long as I'm submitting to God and submitting to Christ as he sent his son for us. You know what I mean? And so I really believe that when you constantly are being told to repeat these mantras, I am this, I am that, it does something psychologically. It's, you know, psychologically you start to tell yourself that that's what you are, and that's what you can never be. You can never be anything other than that. And
let me ask you a question on that real quick, to throw a bone to the people that are, and again, myself 3 months ago, I would have been kind of pushing back on you if you were, you know, talking about it being disempowering, because I AA kind of says you're either all in or you're not, right? There are people that have 30, 40 years of sobriety, and I believe them. I don't believe all of them, but I believe some of them, that truly have it. And every day they make that claim of, I'm an alcoholic. I'm Charlie. I'm an alcoholic, whatever. But it works for them. Do you think maybe for certain personalities, it's better, and for others, it just doesn't work well? I don't know, like, why for me did it make me feel disempowered, and for other people, it doesn't affect them that way?
I mean, I think there is some truth to that, but I would also make the argument that, so this is, you know, a lot of times I see people who are 20 years clean. And I remember sitting in a meeting one time, and the guy was speaking, and he said that he's been sober for 30 years and he's never missed a meeting. And the first thought that came to my head is, well, now you're addicted to the meetings. You know what I mean? I'm just saying.
Which is, you know, honestly, I would take that over the other, but yes, I hear you.
Of course. But what I'm saying is that you're still feeding into some type of addiction. What I'm trying to say is, like, you can become more powerful. You can do more. And where is that handicapping you in other parts of your life? Right? Where is that addictive personality that I need to do this? Where is that handicapping you in other parts of your life? I don't know. It's different for every person. But what I'm saying is that I feel like we're supposed to be free, and we're supposed to be free from vices and addictions, and we've overcome all that. And if you, as a believer, Christ took all that on the cross and it's gone. And so what I would say, and that was the first thing that I was thinking, I'm like, 30 years and you haven't had a drink, or you haven't done drugs or anything like that, you're no longer an addict. You know what I mean? You can't keep saying that you're something that you're not. I haven't committed a crime in 20 years or so. I'm not a criminal. So I'm not going to continue to claim those things. What I am is a husband. What I am is a successful person in everything that I do. I can write well. I can speak well. I can do these things, and I believe these things. You know what I mean? And I think that if we take those, that anybody, I mean, I'm sure AA does great things for a lot of people. I know that it does. But I wonder, how much greater could you be if you started to take the training wheels off and see how far that you can really go?
That's what I was thinking of. Like, it's the milk versus the meat kind of idea, that, you know, early on with AA, when you finally tell yourself, I'm powerless over this, that could be something somebody really needs to do if they need to admit, I have a problem here. And then maybe they've not admitted that for years. Everybody knows it but them. And they're finally at a point, they're like, I need help. And the way of saying that through AA is, I am powerless over this, and I need a higher power's help. That's great. But to stay there after 30 years of sobriety, it almost seems like nonsense. Like you're just saying this because you have to.
Well, at one point, I was powerless over my vices. That's 100% true. So
right. Okay, good point.
I agree with that. But I'm not anymore, right? And so I'm not going to keep claiming that. I'm not going to keep saying that I'm powerless when I know I'm not. When I've understood and I've got the blueprint to overcome these things. And then also what it does is that when you do fall back, just like how you was giving an example of yourself, when you do fall back, you have to take ownership of that. And you have to say, no, it's not because I'm powerless. It's because I chose to disregard the blueprint that was set before me. When I slip up and when I fall, that's how I look at it. I don't look at it and say, well, you know what, man, that's just how I am. No, that's not how I am. I know how to do this. You know what I'm saying? It's like when when you were playing sports and you playing baseball, you knew how to be successful going up to the plate. You know what I mean? You knew how to hit that curveball. And when you look at when you were having a slump or something like that and you analyze that, you would say, it's because I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that. And that's easily correctable. And once we can understand that.
That's such a great example,
power.
brother. It really is, because I was just thinking about baseball. I've really been working through this myself because, alcoholism runs in my family. It's something that I want to get past. I'm drinking less and less and less, but having that slip up not so long ago, I think it was by God's design that it wasn't even a lot, but my wife caught me. She knows I have an issue, and it really set me straight in a lot of ways coming into this new year and having this conversation with you. Where was I going with that? I think I was saying I'm in process with it, but I know this, looking back at my baseball career, you said we learn from things, across the board. If you learn something in sports, how can we lay that over into our life? I know I used to suck at hitting the slider. I was a left-handed hitter. If there was a left-handed pitcher, the ball would start at my hip. I would get afraid of it. I would kind of get that jelly leg, and then I'd whip my bat at it and miss, or it would be in the dirt and I would miss. And I started to believe I could not hit a left-handed slider. And I was terrible at hitting left-handed sliders. It was only when I actually got into the batting cage and began to work off of a machine throwing me left-handed sliders, and I practiced it in a controlled environment. Then I started hitting it, and then I started hitting it hard. And I was like, you know what? I can do this. Mechanically, I can do this. I began to walk to the plate with a little more confidence. Then I started hitting a single, and then a double, then maybe a home run off. And then all of a sudden, I ended up leading all of AA baseball in left on left hitting, only a few years later. But that would not have happened if I didn't start believing I could do it through practice and repetition. So, but if I would have walked to the plate always saying I suck at this, I'm powerless over a left-handed slider.
Exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point. Faith is everything, right? Faith is everything. And faith, you have to believe that you can do something in order to do it. Right now, if you told me to build a rocket, I couldn't do it. But if I trained, if I studied, if I went years and years and went through the process of educating myself on it, why can't I do it? Other men do it. You know what I mean? Other hitters can hit a slider. What are they doing that you're not doing? And it starts with the belief system. It starts with you believing that you can. So when I talk to people and they say, well, I'm just a drug addict. Well, that's because you keep telling yourself that. Let's try not doing that. Let's try saying that you've overcome that. Let's try saying that you're not an addict. Let's try doing that. Let's try tapping in to the things that you're good at, and let's work on those things. Let's not worry about the addiction. You know what I mean? I always tell people, a lot of times it's about the environment that you're in. When you're in these type of institutions, whether they're drug rehab programs, prisons, jails, halfway houses and stuff like that, you're around a lot of that same negative energy. But if you are around better energy, higher energy people that are actually achieving and doing things and actually working on things, you don't have time to think about your addiction. You know what I mean? You have a business going on, you have a family going on. There's not time to think about that. So
Absolutely.
you need to start putting yourself around that, and it starts with your mind. You have to believe that you fit in. You have to believe that I can be around these people. When I first started speaking, speaking to people, I used to be like everybody else. I can't speak in front of people. Well, of course you can't, because you keep telling yourself that. So I literally had to talk myself into it and give myself pep talks and say, think about this, bro. You are here. People are coming to hear you speak. So why are you worried about what they've already given you that? By them showing up, they've already given you that respect. They've already given you that type of honor to sit down and spend an hour of their life to hear you speak. So you have it already. Tap into that. Don't let that go. Don't start to doubt yourself. And that's what I feel like when we talk about this being a spiritual battle, what the enemy likes to do is create doubt. And that's what the enemy did if you go back to the Garden of Eden, what did he do? He created doubt in Eve. He started telling Eve, God isn't who he says he is.
Mm-hmm.
This is not how he says it. And so doubt crept into her mind, and she started to compromise her morals and her values and her beliefs because he started to doubt. And that's the same thing that happens to us. We start to doubt. And that's the only way that he gets us. Once you start doubting, then you go down that snowball effect starts to happen.
Absolutely. Where does God fit into this? Because obviously with AA, it's like God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. Here we're talking about empowerment, but I know we're not talking about it in the way that Beyonce would say, you know, or any celebrity would talk about self-empowerment, because it's more like you will become like God. That's not what we're saying here. So for you, what's the God element, the Christ element in this, in terms of your empowerment to overcome?
Well, I think God fills in the gaps where you can't do it yourself. He fills in the gaps to the point where then he becomes the foundation. He becomes everything. I go back. When I read my Bible, when I pray and I meditate, I'm going back to the source that has given me all the answers. I feel like a lot of times when we talk about faith, right, and we talk about having faith, I look and I say, God gave me everything I need in order to overcome the problems that I'm going to face on a daily basis. He gave that to me when he created me. He gave me a brain to think, right? He gave me a able body to be able to move things and build things and do the things that I need. So I need to trust that, right? I need to trust that. I don't need to doubt myself, because if God created me insufficient, then that means God himself is insufficient. And that's not true. God gave you everything that you need. So when people say, how do you prove your faith in God? By doing the things that he gave me the ability to do, right? I don't need to sit here and a lot of times we have this idea that I'm keeping the faith is me just sitting around and waiting for some miracle to happen. That's not the case. You are the miracle. You're the miracle that took place when you were born in your mother's womb, and then you came into this world, and now you're here. Now make it happen. Use the tools that he gave you. It's almost like he gave you the whole tool set. He gave you the blueprints. He gave you everything. He set it before you, and you're still sitting there waiting for him to put it together. He gave you everything. So that's how I look at it. Like, that's where God comes into place, is he gave us all the tools. He gave us his word. He gave us his son. He gave us the example. What more do you need? You know what I mean? So when I talk to people, I'm like, it's already there. You just don't see it yet.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. When I listen to you talk, you know, if I had not heard the beginning of this conversation, it would never even enter my mind that you spent 15 years of your life in prison and, you know, living a life for a while there of crime and drugs and all the other stuff. It's amazing, dude. Like, I mean, like, as you're talking about miracle, like that to me is a miracle that you're sitting here talking like you're talking. Do you have temptations that come back from the old life or are they completely in the rearview mirror? I mean, I know that nobody's perfect, obviously. I'm not asking you that, but I'm saying, are some of the old stuff, the dark stuff that led you down that path, is that still on the table that you have to fight against?
Not so much. I mean, of course the thoughts are always there. You know what I mean? I always liken it to, like, you know, like when you fight dogs, right? And you fight dogs and
yeah, I fight dogs all the time, dude. No, I don't know anything. Honestly, I don't know about it.
No, I'm just saying, but like the example, like they say, like when you have a dog that fights, that dog can't be around people anymore because they've tasted blood. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like once you've thought a certain way, it's hard not to think that way anymore. If you understand what I'm saying.
I do. Yep. I do.
So I mean, the thoughts come there. You know what I mean? I'll give you a great example. When COVID started, right? I remember I went with my wife somewhere. We went to go get some tacos, and they made us stand outside because, you know, COVID, nobody can be inside except the people that are inside. Anyway,
right, sure. Yeah.
So we're standing outside, and a guy is walking towards us, and he has a mask on, he has a beanie on, he has a mask on, and he's walking towards us. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? What's going to happen here? And then I was like, oh, he has a mask on. Okay. And then I thought to myself, I said, man, if this was 20 years ago, I'd be rich. That's what that thing meaning.
Right.
We can do anything
Yeah.
because you're not gonna stop it. I'm gonna walk right up to you. You're gonna allow me to, and then I'm taking everything because I got a mask on. And so that's what those type of things. You think about, but I got a really great support system. My family's there. My mother, my father have never left my side. My wife
I wanted to
is
ask you about, and I don't mean to interrupt you at all, but that's a
yeah.
fascinating thing. So you grew up in a Christian household. You said you with the Bible in your home, reading it, going to church, right? Then you go to
Right.
prison for 15 years of your life, and now you're out doing ministry again. What is their, I mean, just 10,000 foot level? What's it been like for them?
Man, it's the I would say the greatest feeling to let them see that.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I grew up with my mother and my father. I also grew up with my grandparents, my grandmother, my grandfather. They were very, very, we all lived together. Um, and so my grandfather recently, he passed away in September, and I actually preached at the church for the first time in October. And so I invited him to come, but he didn't he passed away before that. But yeah, he was proud. You know what I mean? And for them to be seeing me not in blues, not behind the glass, not, out and, stepping in the house and then leaving and going out and coming back smelling like weed and alcohol and, getting the car shot up and all type of stuff, for them to see me out here, like, really trying to make a difference. I mean, every time, like, I got a text from my aunt the other day, and she said, when the book was released, your grandfather, he'd be proud. He'd be telling everybody right now. So to me, man, that's I mean, I couldn't, when you talk about where does God come into play, that's it right there. You know what I mean? The fact that these people had every right to leave me behind, but they didn't. And I'm trying to do the best that I can by giving it back to them. And that's, you can't duplicate that, man.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I cut you off there. You were saying you've got a wife, you have kids as well?
No kids yet, but I got a wife, and my wife would kill me if she knew I was doing any type of crime or any type
Okay.
of she's not cut from that cloth at all. You know what I mean? Like, I joke around with her sometimes and I say, man, we could do this. And she's like, shut up. Don't, like, and she'd be like, you're crazy. It's never had none of these things. So it's like, no, I'm not saying that the temptation is never there. But as far as, like, getting involved, to be honest, bro, like, I really feel like in order for you to really change, and goes for anybody that's going through these things, you have to be kind of disgusted with it. You know what I mean? Like, you really do. You have to be disgusted with the lifestyle. I mean, yeah, there's times I still, think back or talk to certain people and we kind of reminisce and all that. But at the end of the day, the thought of even getting involved and getting back into that whole world is, man, I like this world a whole lot better. I like
Yeah.
this life a lot better.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. Well, tell me a couple things here as we close it out. I wanted to hear your ministry today. I know you did preach your first sermon, which I know that's a different thing than your book, but its title was interesting. I think it was called like War Ready, or We Got to Be War Ready, something like that.
Yeah, that was the one I did in October. I'm actually doing one this weekend too, on this Sunday.
Okay,
at
I've not
our
listened.
church.
I've not listened to that
Yeah.
yet, Che. But what I'm going to do is when we get off here, I'm going to play that live. Okay, so that's a little bit of a risk for
Okay,
me
yeah.
because who knows? You may be praying to hit something. I'm making a joke here. I've not heard it before, and we don't know each other that well. But I'm going to I'm going to play that. But give us the breakdown on what that message was all about, and then tell us about your book and your ministry a bit more.
That message, it revolved around the story of King David and Bathsheba, right? I don't know if you remember that.
Oh,
but,
yeah, I remember.
But
it.
I didn't. Okay,
That's
but
applicable.
But the character that I was focused on, that always caught my eye when I first read it, was Bathsheba's husband Uriah the Hittite, right?
Yeah.
Because I was so impressed when David called him back from war, and he said he slept on his front porch and was like, "Not until you send me back." And I thought, "What do you mean send me back? He brought you back from war." And he wouldn't sleep with his wife. He was like, "No, my men are out there. I'm going back out there. I need to be with them." And I thought to myself, we have to have that mentality. Like, we're in a spiritual battle, we have to run to the front lines. And
Yeah.
so many of us, we're just kind of lukewarm, right? We're just here. We're not really fully committed. We're kind of in one foot out the other. Sundays we come to church and we're on
Jay,
fire for God.
that's where, I mean, you're talking about Uriah. That's where King David was. He was, when the kings went off to war in the springtime, he was hanging out on the rooftop, checking out some chicks, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. Right. Slipping. Right. He was we talked about it earlier, like with the doubt thing. That's what the enemy saw him. He knew where he was supposed to be and was like, "Look at you. You're back home. Look at
Yeah.
you. Look at her. What do you think about that? You're the king. You can do this." And that's that doubt. You start to doubt, "Oh, maybe I can make this happen. Maybe." And so that's what that message was about, being prepared, understanding when you're in a spiritual battle, you can't let your guard down. We have to be from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, we have to be in war ready mode. Like, it's the enemy is out there, and I'm telling you, he's watching you. And as soon as you start make any type of indications, and I give this especially for men, when you're home alone and you start to scroll through IG and you see that, half naked, that thought starts to
you
come.
see the Instagram butts, the fitness girls, man, they throw them on my feed all the time. Yep.
That's to replay. So you have to be, ready at all times. And that's what that message was about.
That's really good, man. Well, what about the book? And then the book you've already discussed a little bit. Where can we find that? Is that available for purchase now?
Yeah, it's an ebook right now, so you can
Okay.
get it immediately. It's over on Amazon. If you go to any of my social media, you can see that I have it in the link tree there. On my Instagram, it's right there in the bio, but it's right on Amazon. It's the Freedom Doctrine Book 1, My Path to Canaan, and it's
Excellent.
by Che. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pull that up here in a second. It's got the black and the red cover?
Yeah, that's
Got
it
it.
right there.
Okay, cool. And then your ongoing ministry day to day, what's that looking like, and how do people connect with you there?
Just through all my socials, you can find me there. I'm back. The No Spoon podcast is gonna be back hopefully next week. I've been having some technical difficulties with it. A lot of people have been asking me about it, but we're gonna get back onto a weekly live show where we discuss culture, politics, and common sense. I do a class every Saturday for men that are reentering back into society, come back from prison, addiction, and all that stuff. That's right there at our church, which is on 76 in Avalon in South Central LA. Also, I got a new project that's going to be coming out probably next month with a friend of mine. It's called the Bushido Tribe, which is kind of similar to what I seen your promo of the Warrior MBS.
Yeah.
But we're just going to go city to city speaking and trying to wake up people to this agenda, trying to start programs, get men more involved, and create networks of community that we can try to put things together. The Bushido Tribe is basically Bushido. Everybody knows, or those that don't know, it's the samurai code of conduct, and it's basically we want to get men back onto this code of conduct, this ethical code of conduct that kind of binds us all together, and then be able to network with each other through business, through social meetings, whatever it is that we can kind of put together this tribe of men that comes together and tries to build a better community and society. Men have to be at the forefront of this whole movement, and it's not going to work unless we're not. And so that's the message with that.
100%. Who do you look up to in the men's masculinity movement?
I like guys like Andy Frisella. I like what he's doing. I like Bedros. I can't remember his last name at this moment, but yeah, I mean, those guys are cool. I think that we need some men that are more I would say biblically based.
Yeah,
You
so
know what I mean?
not Andrew Tate. He's not who you're looking at.
Nah, I mean, look, like we said, you can find good in anything, and I find some good in what he's saying. But
Yeah.
and we, like I was kind of explaining earlier, I went by Red Pill Che at first, but I'm not really into the whole red pill thing. I think it's gonna a way wrong turn, in my opinion. But that's, a discussion for another time, I
Sure.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I generally understand what you're saying though.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good, man. I just wanted to kind of get a feel for who you look up to. This guy's more talks about political stuff, but he also talks sports. Is Jason Whitlock? He's got a big movement here in Nashville. That's where Jason
Oh, yeah,
Whitlock,
yeah,
the
yeah.
sports writer. He does a lot
Yeah.
of stuff for men's masculinity here in Nashville. He has a prayer group every Wednesday night, but he also does these events called the Fearless Army. His stuff's really good. From an intellectual level, I do like Jordan Peterson's stuff for men. I think that's pretty good, but from a academic perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think there's more and more people like us rising to the surface, man, that really care about this issue of masculinity and waking up. And that's what I want us to end on. Is you talked about your group that goes around and you're speaking and you're trying to wake people up. Is that waking them up to what's going on in the inside? But you also said the agenda, which I think, okay, there's global agendas going on. Are you kind of talking about both? Wake us up on the inside so we can fight the battle against the agenda that's outside of us. Is that what?
I mean, you can't. First of all, if you don't wake up the inside, you're not going to want to fight the outside. There's a lot of people that we're just kind of going through life, right? I actually just made a video and posted it on IG this morning about that. I feel like you have a lot of NPCs, non-player characters. These are people that are just, kind of going through the motions. So we got to wake people up to that. We got to wake people up that your vices, your everyday habits are kind of imprisoning you.
Absolutely.
But there is an agenda. There's definitely an agenda, like you said, globally, nationally. I think that it's common sense, bro. If I wanted to defeat a nation, I would go. If I wanted to defeat just a group of people, I'm going to identify who the strongest people are, right? And then I'm going to weaken them and destroy them, right?
Yes.
And if we and I know a lot of people don't like to hear this these days, but men are physically stronger. I don't know, that's kind of a crazy concept these days, but they just are. They're stronger. And not only that, but men also, we think on the logical side, right? And I think that there is an agenda to turn people into emotional beings.
That's
because
right.
Emotional beings are subjective. They're not concrete. And if we can keep people emotional, if we can keep people irrational, then it's easy to manipulate them. And so when I look at the destruction of masculinity is not just because they don't like men and they don't like us being able to grow beards or, the fact that we can get bigger muscles. I don't think that's the main thing. I think the main thing is that we instill the logic aspect of our thinking, and they would rather people be more emotional. And so that is the main objective, to make people emotional, make people less logical, not being able to think logically or critically and be able to think their problems through. And so that's the main issue. We want to wake people up to these agendas and show them that this is what they're doing. So, and that's, once we're able to do that, once we can instill that back into the individual, then you can't manipulate them anymore. You can't get over on them because we see through their games.
Right. No, Che, you're on the money, my friend. Brother, I think that's where we'll leave it today. I would definitely want to have you come back on, especially in terms of these topics in the near future, brother. And I want to play your War Ready by Che right now. Everybody go to the links in the description. That's going to have all his social media links as well as the book. And was there anything else? Social media, book, what else?
That's it. Just follow me on those platforms. Get the book, share it with people. You know what I mean? Connect with me if you got some ideas, you got some things you want to do, you want whatever it is. I'm open to it. I love connecting with people, especially like yourself. And what you're doing and the Warrior MBS thing, man. That was, and I saw that in the beginning. I said that's exactly what we need. We need that on a bigger scale. So just to kind of shout out you, if today's the last day, I would get on that immediately. Well,
that includes you, Che. Anybody that comes on my show can come on for free. So you're welcome. If you want to talk about that, you can. But right now, we're going to get War Ready right here with Che. Che, I'm going to give you a phone call right after I do this. So hang out for just a second, okay?
Okay, perfect. Appreciate it.
All right,
that,
guys.
Bro.
Thanks for tuning in and stay tuned right here.
It's no
Good morning, Peace Chapel. Let's give it up one more time for the worship team. Well, I want to welcome you guys, everybody that is here in attendance and those that are watching online, here to Peace Chapel of LA, down here in the heart of Los Angeles on 76 and Avalon, the small church that's doing big things, right? I want to just first introduce myself, Pastor D. He gave me a nice introduction. I appreciate that. My name is Christopher Govea. Most of you probably know me as Che. Before I begin, I want to let you guys know, those that are watching online, there's a chat down there at the bottom. Engage in that chat. If you're watching this on the replay, engage as much as possible. And what I mean by that is comment, like, share, subscribe. The more that you do that, the more that you engagement that you have with the algorithm, the more that the social media platforms have an incentive to push us to the front. And that's what we're trying to do, is get the word of God out there. That's how we do it in 2022, right? Well, I want to just start off by, first of all, thanking our senior pastor, DeAntoine Fitz, for this opportunity. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. And I want to begin, before I get into this message, right? I want to begin by testifying to the power of the Lord, right? I want to I don't know if this is going to be a problem for you guys, but I like to pace a little bit, right? I walk a little bit when I talk. But I like the podium. I can come back to it, but I like to walk a little bit. So I want to testify to the power of the Lord. I know that there's probably some of you that are here, some of you that are watching online, and maybe you don't believe in the power of God, or maybe you're not really too familiar with that, right? Maybe you don't really understand what that means and why that we gather here every Sunday to meet and to congregate, right? And if you don't believe that, that's fine. But I'm just going to tell you my perspective. I'm going to tell you what God has done for me, right? So there's some of you who don't know my story, right? 20 years ago, today, 20 years ago, I was living down there on Boucher Street. If you know what Boucher Street is over there by Union Station and Alvaro Street. There's a big sign that says Men's Central Jail, right? And that's where I was at. And at the time, it looked like I was going to be there for a long time. At the time, it looked like me standing up here was never going to happen, right? And I remember being there. I was in 3400 Able Row, those of you that know, right? And I remember being on the phone and talking to my mom, and I was telling her, I did a lot of wrong things, right? I did a lot of things that weren't good. My shortcomings, my failures, things that I did that I took responsibility for, right? I said, even though it doesn't look good, one day God will use this. He will use this for his glory, right? And I told my mother specifically, I said, one day I will be standing up here on a stage just like this, doing exactly what I'm doing today. Now, I know that a lot of us are familiar with, because I work with you guys come to my class on Saturday, and I understand who we are and who we are as a population, right? So a lot of you can relate to causing a lot of hurt and pain and sorrow and shame to the people that you love, right? I know a lot of you can relate to people saying they're no good, they're just a liar, a cheat, a thief, a killer, cutthroat, conniver, all those different things, right? And you've had family who have said, I can love you from a distance, right? I know a lot of you can relate to that. I mean, I've been that person, right? I brought shame to my family, right? And when Pastor D asked me a few months ago, he said, can you speak one of these Sundays? I said, yeah, of course, right? And so one of the first people that I reached out to and I wanted to be here was somebody who had, carried my family name longer than anybody else. And I talked to him and I said, I want you to be here. And he said, I'm going to do what I can to be there, right? And unfortunately, a couple of weeks ago, he went to go be with the Lord, right? And But I want to tell you something, right? I want to tell you something. That being able to talk to him in the last days of his life, right? And for my grandfather to tell me that he was proud of me. That the person who brought shame to the family name, that he could be proud of, right? That's only from God. That's only from God. That's only God doing that, right? There's nothing in my life that I'm more proud of than that. I'm nothing in my life that I can be more proud of than the fact that he can say and tell other people in the family, look at the good that he's doing. Look at the good that he's doing. It's like, you know, if you don't believe that God is real, if you don't believe, if you look and you say, man, I've gotten too far low, I've done too many grimy things, I've been too much of a burden, I've brought too much shame and too much pain and too much hurt, I'm here to tell you that that is a lie. I'm here to tell you that no, God can, if with God, when you really surrender your life to God, he can change all of that. He can change all of that. You may not know it. You may not believe it. You may be sitting here thinking to myself, man, you don't know the stuff that I've done. But you don't know the stuff that I've done. If we're able to change all that, to be standing here today, 20 years later, and standing here on this stage doing exactly what I said I was going to do, God can take the worst things that you go through, the worst things that you've done. He can take all your manipulation, your lies, your thievery, your cheating. He can take all that and he can turn it for his glory. So I just wanted to start off that way. And I wanted to tell you about the power of God, right? But today, I want to talk about something that we hear so much about, right? It's all over your cable news. It's all over social media. It's all over everything. Everybody talks about war. And it's interesting because I started working on this a few weeks ago, and then now we have a war that's just kicked off in Israel and Palestine, and there's war over there. There's war in Ukraine. There's war on the streets of LA and Chicago and Baltimore. There's war with fentanyl and dope, and there's war with homelessness. There's war between the races, war between gender, war between culture. There's a war in your children's classroom. There's a war. War is everywhere. But as a believer, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to perceive war? We know that the Bible tells us that the war is not between flesh and blood, but it's between spiritual forces. There's a spiritual battle that's going on. There's a spiritual war. And what does that mean? Is that a bunch of hocus pocus, like when you guys are just saying stuff that doesn't really mean anything? But I'm trying to tell you, there's a real war. You may not see it. You can't see it with the naked eye. There's nothing that NASA can come up with or any scientists can come up with that can show you what this war is, but there's a war going on around you. As we gather right here in this place right now, there is a fortress that's been set up of angels that are protecting us. But I'm telling you, the enemy wants to get inside there. The enemy wants to get in there, and he wants to infiltrate and turn us out. There is a real war. If you don't think that you're a part of it, I'm telling you right now, there's something called collateral damage. That's people that are not engaged in the war, but you still get hit. Come on, son. You could still get hit. So I'm going to tell you something about war, right? I'm going to tell you something about, as a Christian, how should you approach this topic right here? And I'm going to tell you that what I see that's going on today is that there's two kinds of soldiers when it comes to this war that is happening right here in the church, right? The first, I didn't turn this on. Gotcha. The first one is the non-existent soldier, right? This is the person that says, you guys, this is all fear-mongering. None of this is real. You guys really don't, there's nothing like this is going on. This is all in your head. This is all something that is contrived so you can get likes and views and clicks, and we can subscribe to your channel, and you can get monetized and make money and all this type of stuff, right? And that's fine. If you walk away from here today and you say, man, there's no war going on, I'm just coming to church, I'm paying my tithes, I do what I'm supposed to do, that's fine. That's where you want to stand. But I'm telling you, again, like I said, there's something called collateral damage. You don't have to be engaged in war to get hit with the objects of war, right? The other kind is called, there's a toy soldier. Man, this person looks good, right? They got all the newest, the helmet, the body armor. Everything looks good. This is the person that comes to church, and they come to church on Sundays, and they're brother this, sister this, hallelujah, praise the Lord, amen, thank you, all these different things. And they pray so intricately, and they sound so great, but as soon as they walk out of the building, they act like it doesn't exist. These are toy soldiers. They got a gun, but it's shooting blanks. They got a sword, but it's dull, and that body armor is just plastic. It's not real. See, we don't think that it's really, that it's a real thing, that this spiritual war is something that's real. So I want to talk to you today about being a soldier for Christ, and what does a true soldier for Christ look like, right? There's something that somebody told me a while ago. This was a long time ago, and they said that a soldier knows about 2 phases of life, and that's it. There's 2 phases for a soldier: war and preparation for war. That's it, right? That means that in the time of peace and prosperity, they know that something is coming, that the enemy is coming. Let me tell you something about your enemy real quick. He's relentless. He's been around a lot longer than you've been here. He's been around a lot longer than everything that you see around here. He's not quitting just because you decided to give your life to the Lord. Just because you decided to go to church and you paid your tithes, he's not afraid of that. Trust me, he's seen that millions and millions of times. He's relentless, right? So when things are good in your life, and you guys know what this is like, when you having like financial problems or something like that, when money's low, you guys come up with the best hustles, the best schemes, the best business ideas. You guys sound like those entrepreneurs that are on social media and talking about, I need to get up at 3 in the morning and do 270 burpees and, you know what I mean, and create an LLC and a trust and all this stuff. You got all these different plans when your back is against it. But as soon as you make that money and your bank account fills back up, what do? You kick your feet back up. You relax. You get your guard gets let down, right? Your guard gets let down. And that's kind of the same thing. And when you're a real soldier, when you're a true soldier, you should know that in times of peace, you should be preparing for war. That in times of prosperity, that it's coming, right? Now, the part of the passage from Scripture that I want to touch on today is from the 2nd book of Samuel, right? Chapter 2. Most of you are familiar with this. This is the story of King David and Bathsheba. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about it. If you don't know the story, I'm going to paraphrase it or summarize it, and I'm going to put it in layman's terms so you guys understand it. But then we're going to get into the details of the spiritual war, and then I'm going to tell you about something that doesn't really get touched on, right? I'm going to tell you a part of that story that doesn't really get touched on. So the story of King David and Bathsheba, right? King David, he was the king of Israel. We all know this. So one day he stands onto his palace balcony. He's overlooking the courtyard, and what does he see? He sees Bathsheba, the most beautiful woman in all of Israel, and she's taking a bath. And then David does something that a lot of men have trouble with, right? He looks, and then he looks again, right? Now, you know it's that second look, right? It's that second look. And then that third look and that fourth look. And then he starts contriving a plan, right? And he starts contriving a plan. Now I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to tell you something, because we talk about this spiritual war, right? We talk about spiritual warfare. And we don't understand spiritual warfare. You engage with it, and it's in the battlefield of the spiritual war is going on right here in the mind, right? So I want to show you something, and it's interesting because yesterday, in the reentry class, we were talking about addiction and stuff like that, and I said, and a question that I asked was, do you feel like your addiction is out of your control? And one of the brothers said, it is once I'm in the addiction, right? It's out of control then. And it's interesting because, of course, it's out of control then. So if you look at the story of King David, and once he made that second look, he opened the floodgates, right? He opened the floodgates because what happened was, if we look at it from the spiritual perspective, and you understand that there's God's soldiers, there's the enemy soldiers, and an enemy soldier is always watching you. He's always looking at you. He's always waiting. He's waiting to see you slip. He's waiting to see a chink in your armor. He wants to find that weak link, right? So when David looked that first time, and then he gave that second look, they pounced on him. They pounced on him, and then they started telling him, David, you can do this. David, you're the king. David, no one's going to know. You can just pull her up here. And Bathsheba's husband was a general in the army, and he was off to war. Now, this wasn't a time when everybody had a cell phone and you can videotape somebody going into somebody's house and they end up on the shade room or something like that. No, this is the time back then when he can just wipe all that away. He's the king. So he starts having these plans and these ideas. And he tells his servant, call her up here. So Bathsheba goes up there. And then you guys know what happens. He invites her to his room and things are done, right? So what happens next is, see, here's the thing. See, the thing about it, and this is again, I was telling you about the power of God, right? What God does, right? We have these plans. And most of you know, especially if you've been on the other side of life and you have these plans to get away with something. And in your mind, you've worked it all out, right? This is going to work. It's no way. And then the one thing that could possibly go wrong that you didn't plan for because it was so improbable, it happens, right? That's what God did to David here, right? Because David thought this is just something that's going to happen. We're going to sweep it under the rug. But then Bathsheba, she ends up pregnant. So now David has a dilemma, right? David has a dilemma. And you would think that at some point David's going to say, okay, let me do what I know is right and take accountability and responsibility. But David, the floodgates were open. Like I said, they were already on him. So they were already telling him more to do. So what do we do? What do we normally do when we make a mistake? We cover it up with more mistakes. And then the snowball just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what David did is he said, here's what I'm going to do. Call her husband back. Tell him, thank you for your service. You've done a great job. Probably awarded him a Medal of Honor, gave him a parade, got him a big feast, great wine, great food. Go be with your wife. And he figured, hey, he goes and he be with his wife. She ends up pregnant. It's his baby. It's not mine. Remember, this is not Maury Povich, right? We don't have no you are the fathers going on, right? This is about a time when there was probably a whole lot of maybe babies. It may be his and it may be yours. We don't know, right? So there's a lot going on at that point. So David calls him back. And David says, man, come back. Don't worry. You're good. But again, and all the resources that David had, everything that he had, he could not outplay the chess master, and that's God, because God had different plans. Her husband, Uriah the Hittite, and I'm going to talk about him a little bit more in a minute, but Uriah the Hittite decided that he was going to sleep on the palace steps. Now listen. So David, he's got another, so he keep going down. What are we going to do? We're going to make another mistake, right? That's what we're going to do. So what's he do? Fine, you don't want to play this game? Then I'm going to play this game. Send him to the front lines of the fiercest battle, and then he sent word to pull back. He gave him up to the enemy so he can be killed. So this goes back to this second look that David gave. That second look. That all he had to do was discipline himself and be like, I ain't supposed to be looking at that. How many of us have those same issues when we know we're doing something? I'm not supposed to be doing that. I'm not supposed to be looking at that. I'm not supposed to click on that. I'm not supposed to go over here and talk to this person. I'm not supposed to engage with that. I see what's going on around me. I know that this party has changed into a different atmosphere, but I'm still going to engage. Or I know that the homie is saying, hey, we should go do this and we should hang out here, but I know what's going to happen, but we keep giving that second look, that third look, that fourth look. And so David went all the way from a second look to murder. He went all the way to a second look to murder. Now I want to go back and I want to focus on Uriah the Hittite. This was Bathsheba's husband, right? And because when I first read about this story, I read this passage here, and I'm going to share this verse with you right now. But when I read this, I was saying, who is that guy? Right? Because we're talking about being a soldier here, right? We're talking about what does a real soldier for Christ look like. And I thought, who is this guy? So I'm going to read from you right here. This is 2 Samuel 2:11. And this is when Uriah was sleeping on the steps,
And he didn't go and sleep with his wife. Instead, he slept on the palace steps, and this is what he said to David. He said, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in temporary shelters, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Should I then go to my house to eat and drink and to sleep with my wife? By your life and the life of your soul, I will not do this thing. When I read this story the first time I read it, I said, who is that guy? And the reason I said, who is that guy? Because you got to look at this. Do you think any of these soldiers wanted to be out there at war? They're sleeping in the trenches. It's nighttime. It's cold. They're probably eating bugs if they can eat. They probably doing this. It's not the best of atmosphere. Even soldiers that come in the United States Army today, the best army that's ever been around in modern times, they can't wait to get home. They can't wait to be home with their families. Right? And so David called him back and said, hey, don't worry about it, man. You're good. Shook his hand, like I said, gave him a medal of honor, did all that stuff. And yet this man said, if my comrades are out there, I'm out there. Who is that guy? Who is that guy? That's the first thing that I said, Uriah the Hittite. I need to know who this guy is, because how many people would do that? And you got the blessing from the king. The king told you it was cool. It's not like you abandoned your brothers. You were given the permission to leave. So he could go home, kick back, watch some football, do what he does, right? But instead he said, I'm not, while my brothers are sleeping in trenches and eating bugs and watching their comrades be killed next to them, I'm going to be there too. So when we talk about being a soldier for Christ, we're talking about being a real soldier. This is the blueprint right there. How many people are willing to go onto the front lines? How many people are willing to go and be there and be where it's happening, where the battle is really going on? So I want to look at things. I'm going to give you some attributes of a soldier here, right? I'm going to give you some attributes of a soldier. And the first one is service, right? The first one is service, right? And it says in Matthew 20:26 through 28, it is not this way among you, but whoever wants to become prominent among you shall be your servant. Whoever desires to be first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many, right? The perfect example of this is Jesus Christ himself, because he had a mission. Now, when we talk about service, some of you we got to take a step back and we got to look at service here, right? Purposeful service, right? Not busy service. A lot of people do busy service. They like to just do things to be busy and say, hey, I went and I did this. Purposeful service, right? Busy service, dig a ditch, fill it back up, dig it again, fill it back up, dig it again, fill it back up, and then you think, I had hard days at work. You did nothing, right? Some people do a lot of service in the church and service in the church and servicing people in the church and servicing the homeless, and their house is falling apart. Service is purposeful service. Remember in the garden when they came to arrest Jesus, what did Peter do? Peter took out his sword and he chopped off the man's ear. And Jesus said no. Why? Because he had a purpose. And even though he felt like he was doing the right thing, and a lot of us feel like we're doing the right thing, we're out here doing what we're supposed to do, and we're out here, we give food to the homeless, we out here, we're feeding people that need it, we're out here at the church all the time. But like I said, if your own family's falling apart, that's not your purpose. Service is real purpose. Service is purposeful. Service should be something that puts you on the mission of God. And if you look at Uriah the Hittite, he knew that even though he had the blessings from the king to come home and be with his wife, that wasn't his purpose. So if we're going to be soldiers, we need to be soldiers with a purpose, doing what is right, doing what we're supposed to do, taking care of our home first, taking care of our families first. We can't service the whole neighborhood and have your whole family falling apart. Selflessness. Philippians 2:3, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility consider one another as more important than yourself. Selflessness. Let's talk about selflessness, right? Because some people, sometimes selflessness could actually be it's disguising selfishness, right? And what I mean by that is sometimes we do things to make it look selfless. It goes back to the purpose. What's your purpose? What are you supposed to be doing, right? There's some people here that God has given you a purpose and he's given you things to do. Maybe he wants you to write that book. Maybe he wants you to open that business. Maybe he wants you just to reach out to that person that's standing in line at the DMV that's having a tough day, right? And we don't want to do that. But instead, we like to post things on social media. Hashtag look at me. Hashtag look how great of a person I am. Hashtag feeding the homeless. All these different things. Selflessness, right? Selflessness doesn't mean that you have to take on everybody else's responsibility. Selflessness meaning doing what God puts you in service to do. Selflessness. It's not about me. A lot of it has to do, and when we talk about this spiritual war, just like David sat there on that balcony, right? Nobody was around. Nobody knew what was going on in his mind. There was nobody to report to and show how great of a person I am because I didn't look at that woman, right? So selflessness is about doing what's best for God at all times, even when nobody else is around. Can you be selfless when there's nobody else to tell you you're being selfless? That's selflessness, right? You don't have to take on everybody else's burden. You have to do your part. You have to do what you're supposed to do, what you've been ordained to do. Surrender. This one is difficult. This one is difficult for a lot of people, right? And he was saying to them all, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Surrender. This is when you have to let go of things, right? This is when you have to let go and let God, right? For us men, that's a lot of it is hard to do, right? It's hard for us to surrender. It's hard for us to say that there's somebody that knows more than me. There's somebody that's more capable than I am. But if we're all in the body of Christ, then we all have a specific plan and a specific purpose. But I want to look at something. I want to look at surrender real quick, right? I want to look at surrender, and I want you to look at it from a different perspective, right? Sometimes we look at surrender and we say, that sounds like weakness, right? Sounds like I'm giving up, right? Right? Sounds like it doesn't have the connotations that, especially like I said, for us men that we want to take a surrender. But look at surrender in a different way, right? Once I surrender that I'm not strong in something, that's when I can be strong in something. Once I admit that I am weak in something, that's when I can change something. See, a lot of us, we think, you know, we had a conversation in our life group, and we were talking about being vulnerable, right? A lot of men don't feel like being vulnerable. And I'm not the big proponent of that. I'm not the big proponent of men sitting around just crying at each other and, you know, just getting all their feelings out and stuff like this. But what I wanted to talk about was it was a different way of looking at this, right? See, in order for you to get good, in order for you to become better and perfect your craft, right, you have to acknowledge your mistakes. You have to acknowledge where you were wrong. A lot of times we don't want to acknowledge where we're wrong. A lot of times we want to just sit here and act like that, you know, that's not really a weakness. We make excuses for ourselves and said it's not really our fault. It's this person's fault or that person's fault, my mother's fault, my father's fault, the environment I grew up in's fault, all these different things. Until we can surrender all of that and say, you know what, this is where the problem is, then the problem will get fixed only when we do that. It's simple. It's simple. See, we like to, in today's society, we like to tell each other lies and say that everything is fine with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Everything is okay. You're perfect just the way that you are. And you're not. You're not. Trust me, I went through the stage of it was everybody else's fault. It wasn't my fault. It's the court's fault, the police's fault, the DA's fault, my lawyer's fault, all these other people's fault. But it was when I finally decided, no, it's your fault. You did that. Then I said, well, If I did that, what else can I do? If I can create bad things in a bad life, I can create a better life. God has given you that ability. He's making you perfectly capable of doing it. But that only comes when we surrender it all to him. When I talked about the power earlier, the power didn't come until I was able to say, not me no more. Not me anymore. Get out of your own way. Some of us are some of us, our blessings are right there. Some of us is the people that God has put in your life to work in your life and to be able to use and to grow, and we're getting in our own way. We don't want to admit that we can't do certain things and that we need to submit and surrender it all to God and let him work. The pieces are around us. The pieces are around you. Sacrifice. Romans 12:1. Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. We're talking about a spiritual war. There has to be sacrifices made. There has to be things. You have to do the things that you don't want to do. You know what? I heard a quote from Mike Tyson, who said, "Discipline was doing the things that you don't love to do, but doing them as if you do." Right? It's the little things, man. It's not the things that people see. It's not the speaking up here. It's not the skinning up here and being able to post something on social media. It's the little things. It's being able to do those things that you don't want to do. It's getting up early in the morning and getting into your word and praying and doing those things. That's what takes you to that. It's the things that you don't see behind the scenes. When I was in high, I had a guy who I used to train with when I was in high school playing football, and we used to go out into the field. Like in the summer times, we used to go to the stadium, and he would be like, "Look around." And I'd be like, "Okay." He said, "You see everybody here?" I said, "There's nobody here." He said, "Exactly." He said, "But this is where your season is made." Right? It's when nobody's here. Right? It's when nobody's around. It's the sacrifices that you make that you can't broadcast, that you can't post. So your body is a living sacrifice. Your body is you give that up to God and let him work. Finally, strength. You want to be a soldier, you have to be strong. Strength. We all know that Philippians 4:13 says that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? But let me tell you something about this spiritual war real quick, and this is going to get the part where it gets kind of real, right? I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but society is not necessarily on the side of God anymore, right? Culture has kind of pushed God to the background, right? We've made ourselves God. We've made ourselves and the people that we worship and the celebrities that we worship, we've made them God, right? There's going to be a lot of things. If you really want to engage and you really want to be a soldier and you really want to be who God has made you to be, you have to be strong, because I'm going to tell you that society is not going to like you. Your opinions are not going to be popular. Sometimes you're going to have to stand up and say the thing that people don't want to hear. Sometimes you're going to have to stand up and say, we don't want that taught in our classrooms. We don't want our children taught that way. You have to stand on the truth. Listen, I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy, right? So it's going to take a strong, strong individual, and it's going to take you surrendering your life to God and your will to God and saying, not your will, but mine. People are going to say what they're going to say. People are going to criticize you. They're going to come after you. They're going to call you all kind of names. You're going to be called a bigot, a racist, a phobic this and a phobic that. But we have to stand on the truth. You know what the truth is. I know what the truth is. We all know truth, right? And I don't care now how many times you try to finagle me with your academic words and all these big words to tell me that up is down and down is up and the sky is not blue, and that a man is a woman and a woman is a man. I don't care what you tell me and what you call me. It's not the truth, and I'm going to stand on that no matter what. See, that's the problem with society. We have a lot of weak people. We have a lot of weak people that they know the truth. They see the truth. You can't manipulate them. You can't fool them, but they're too scared to say it. What is my friends going to say? I'm not going to get any more likes on social media. I'll lose all my followers. I'll get canceled. Listen, let's be honest here. Nobody in here is Kanye West, so you're really not getting canceled. And we're not that important. Let's be honest here. You're not getting canceled because you decided to stand up and tell the truth, and to that extent. Right? Let's be honest here. All it takes is for us to stand up. You know how many people feel and believe the way that you believe, and they know it, and then what they're doing, they're just waiting for that one person. See, a lot of times it's about, man, I don't want to be the first one. But if us in the church, if we're not the first one, then who? Who are you waiting for? If we're not the first one, then who? We should be the ones standing on truth. I don't care what you, this is crazy to me that we can sit here and have debates and arguments about, what is a woman, and people are really sitting here saying, well, it's not really, listen, man, stop it. You got to tell the truth, man. The truth will set you free, for real. Because when they mean the truth will set you free is because I can tell the truth. I'm not worried about you. Listen, do you really think that I'm going to sit here and argue with a person that's going to argue about gender with me? I can't argue with a person that can't tell. 1 + 1 is 2. I don't care if you try to tell me it's 3. If you tell me that 1 + 1 is 3, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to say, this dude's crazy. And I don't give no validity to any of your arguments you got to say. We got to stop worrying about these people. You got to be strong and stand on the truth. So the question I leave with you before I close out today is, are you on the front lines or are you on the sidelines? Are you on the front lines or are you going to be like Uriah the Hittite? Or are you going to be like some of the people that he probably fought with that was looking to be like, man, he's stupid. He really wanted to come back to be a part of this? Yes. Yeah. Because this is where you're supposed to be. This is your purpose. This is the truth. This is the truth. That's where the front lines are. So as we leave and I close out today, right, we have to make this decision. We have to decide, and we have to be able to sit here and say, whatever happens, right, whether you're canceled or whatever, right, whether your friends and family don't want to talk to you anymore, and that's fine, right? You have to sit here and make a decision and say, am I going to do what God wants me to do, regardless of what anybody else has to say? Or am I going to be the coward that knows the truth, but I'm too afraid to say it? We have to tell the truth. We have to get on that front line. We have to be like Uriah the Hittite, that even if you want to take away, if you even want me to take me away from my purpose, nothing is going to stop me. I'm willing to die on that hill. We have to be willing to die on the hill that Jesus Christ died on the cross for us to be here today. So before we leave, I would like you guys to stand up real quick, and I'm going to lead you in prayer, and then we can close out. I think, Pastor, you got a few announcements that you want to make. But I just want to pray for each and every one of you and all of us here, right? And pray for this church, and pray for this community, and pray for this city, and pray for this nation, and pray for all the God's people. Lord God, we just come to you and we lift you up, and we thank you for this opportunity to meet here today. We thank you to gather here. We know that where 2 or more are gathered, and there's way more than 2 here, that you are here and you are present. We ask that you move in each one of our lives, Lord God, and you give us the strength You give us the strength to stand on the truth, your truth, Lord God, the truth that you sent down here to lead us and show us the way and die on the cross for our sins so that we can be redeemed. Lord God, we know that some of us may think that we are too far gone, that we've crossed the line, that there's no point of no return, but that's not true, Lord God. You have sent your son here to do just that, Lord God, and redeem us. And we ask that we, each and every one of us, stand on that truth. We say this today. In your name we pray. Amen. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Hallelujah.